Hey guys, my name is Sandeep Patel. In this video, we are going to learn recursion in very depth. So please stay tuned at the end. So to solve the problem using recursion, you have to take two-step approach, right? So step one is breaking the problem into subproblem, and step two is solving the smallest subproblem, right? So we will take an example here, right? Recursion meaning that you can call the same function again and again, right? And why would we do that? So each time when we call the same function, what we're trying to do is we try to break the problem into a subproblem, right? We try to solve that problem from the big to small, right? So idea is that step one is breaking the problem into subproblem, right? And how do we do that? I'm gonna teach you in very depth in the next slide. So bear with me. So first, let's understand this, right? So let's say that you are given an array, which is 1 to 10, right? So how many ways you can go through each element of this array, right? So first, there's a forward way, right? So you can go from start until end, one by one, right? Or you can start from end and go until the beginning of the array, right? So there are forward and backward. So there are two ways you can travel through the array, right? You can start from the beginning and go until end, or you can start from the end or and come to the beginning, right? Just like you're driving on the road, right? When you have a car that is driving on the straight road, you can go in the forward direction, or you can come in the backward direction, right? So that's the idea. So let's learn step number one, how to break problem into subproblem. Okay, so when we talk about recursion, we need to talk about two approaches that we can take. So in recursion, step one is to break the problem into subproblem, right? So how do we break the problem, right? So let's say that you are given in this array. So how can you break this array so that you have a smallest element, right? So what you can do is you can take either head to tail approach, meaning that you can start from number one, right? And then you remove one element at a time, right? So what at the end there should be only 10 left, right? So only one element, which is the smallest problem that we need to fix, right? So we need, once we solve this problem, then we can solve this big problem. So just bear with me. Let's learn about the second approach, tail to head approach. In this approach, you can start from the backwards, right? So let's say you can start from the end of the array and then go in the backward direction until you hit the one, right? So let's say each time you remove one element from the back until you end up to the first element of the array, which is number one, right? So that's the smaller problem that we can solve. So in recursion, step one is the breaking the problem, and there are two ways you can do. You can either start from the beginning and then remove one element from the head, right? And so all you get is the last element from the array. If you start from backwards, then you get the first element in the array at the end as a smaller problem, right? So that's the smaller element that we get in the array. So now let's move on to step number two, solving the subproblem, right? Okay, so let's understand breaking the problem using the code first. So let's say we are given two functions here, right? Head to tail and tail to head, right? So how do we, so step number one is breaking the problem, right? So we can call this recursive case. Why recursive case? Because we are going to call the same function again and again by breaking the problem. Let's look at this. For example, let's say this head to tail function receives an array, right? And we're breaking this array from the beginning, right? So we are removing the first element from the array and then call the same problem again, right? Until we hit the base case, right? That's the second step, right? So let's worry about the first step here, right? In the tail to head, we're gonna take 0 to until the last of the element minus 1. That means we're removing the last element from the array, right? So how do we do this? Let's take an example here, right? Say that this head to tail function, we're passing 1 2 3 4, right, as an argument, right? All right, so let's say the first call goes here, um, and then we pass 1 2 3 4, right? Now what we're trying to do here is that you can see here that we're slicing the first element, right? Which means we are removing the first element from the array. Okay, so let's remove the first element from the array. So what do we have? So now we have 2 3 4 left, right? So now let's again remove 2 from the beginning and call the next function, right? So it's gonna call itself, right? Because it's a recursion. It's gonna call by removing one element at a time. Okay, so it's gonna call again, then it's gonna call one more time. Okay, 4, and it's gonna call again by removing the one element. Now it's empty array, right? It's still going to continue, right? Because there's no we're not stopping this, right? We're just slicing the element, right? So this is continuously run, right? Infinite time. And we cannot let the code run for infinite time, right? Because it's gonna hang, right, at the end, or it's gonna fail, or you get like call exceeded error at the end, right? So that's where the second step comes in, right, which is solving the sub problem, right? So we broke the problem, right, which is the initial array, to a smaller element, which is like either empty array or like single element, right? So that's the smallest problem that we can solve. Okay, now what? Now step number 2. So we learned the first step, right? How to break problem. We can use head to tail or tail to head method, right? Now second is problem is to solve the sub problem. How do we do that? So let's take the same example, right? So let's say that, sorry, let's say that we're calling this function, right, head to tail. We're passing 1 2 3 4 in it, and then this will call this will remove the first element from the array, call 2 3 4. Then again it's gonna call it's going to remove 2 from the head, and then pass 3 4 to the array, so the function. Then again we're removing the first element, right? And then again it's going to remove the first element from the array, and that is a empty array. Now what should we do so that we don't get into the infinite loop, right? So that's where the base case comes in. So whenever we are at the point where the array elements are 0, like either it's an empty array or it has like one element in it, right? That's where we should break the code, right? And we're doing it by using a base case. This is called base case, right? So base case means we're addressing the smallest problem, right? We're addressing the smallest problem from the biggest problem, right? So we broke the problem, and then at the end we have the smallest problem to solve. And how are we solving this? Just by returning that element, right? So for example, if you look at this code here, when array length becomes 1, or I can say less than equals 1, right? Less than equals 1, right? I can return the same array, right? I can do this. So this will take care of both of these base case, right? So what happens is, now that first time it calls 1 2 3 4, removes 1, calls 2 3 4, removes 3 2, calls 3 4, and then 4 and 4. And at this point, we start to return, right? So what we're gonna do now is that the function will remove this call stack, right? It's returning the array, right, which is empty array, and then um, from this step it's going to return number 4, right? So it's going to return number 4 here, right? But we're not doing anything here, so it's the same number 4, right? Then number 4 goes here and goes here, and then we remove all this stack calls, right, one by one, right? So at the end what we have left is number 4, right? So this is how the recursion works, right? The same thing with the tail to head, right? You have to play by book, right? You have to solve step 1 and 2. So there could be a multiple base cases, so it depends on you, right? You have to decide which base case you need to solve first. Let's take a practical example and understand. Okay, so we have this problem. So given an array size n, sum all the elements using recursion, right? Well, in this case we have array 1 2 3 4, right? And then we want to do a sum of 1 2 3 4, which is 10, right? So when we use head to tail method, right? So how are we going to do this? So first call, let's say we wrote a function, sum function, which takes an array, right? So we need to first address recursive case and then the base case, and that's how we can solve recursion problems, right? Alright, so in the recursive call, what we do is we remove the first element, right, and then call the same function, right? Although the first element that we removed, we can add that element, right, and then call the next function, right, just like this. So this is the first element, and then we sum that and then call the remaining elements, right? So this is going to call 2 3 4. Then we take the 2, we add that 2 plus sum of 3 4, then we take the 3 and sum of 4. Sum of 4 will return 4 because it hits the base case where array length becomes 1, and then it returns the same element, which is 4. So from here it starts to return, so it's going to return 4 here, right? So now sum of 4 is what? 4 plus 3 7, and then sum of 3 4, which is 7, right? Then this is 2 plus 7, which is 9. So 7 9, yeah, this could be 9, right? And then it's gonna return 9 here, and then 9 plus 1, which is 10 here, right? So at the end you get the sum 10, right? That's the idea. Okay, so now what happens when you take the tail to head approach, right? Okay, so in this case, instead of removing the first element, we remove the last element, right? So we're gonna take the 4 out from the array, right? And then call the function, right? So we take 0 to until the end of the array, we remove 4, and that 4 we can sum, right? So this is the last element of the array, which is 4, plus we call the function with the rest of the element, right? We slice from 0 until third element, right? We remove minus 1 returns the last element, right? So we removing from 1 to 3, and then call the same function again. And this is gonna call, and then at the end we have a base case, right? So the last element is 1, so it's start to return from here, right? So it's gonna return 1 to this function because sum of 1 is 1. So 1 plus 2 equals 3, right? And then what is the sum of 1 of 2, which is 3? 3 plus 3 is 6, right? And then it's gonna go back here, 4 plus 6, which is 10, right? So we get the same answer, right? So I hope you like this video. We can check out the code here. So this is the actual code for head to tail or tail to head method. I'm going to run this and see what happens, right? So we should get the same sum, right, when we are summing 5 elements, right? So 5 plus 4 is 9, 11, 14 and 15, right? I hope you like this video. Please do like, comment and subscribe. Thank you.